Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch here for your conference championship preview and predictions, going over the San Francisco 49ers versus the Green Bay Packers in the NFC Championship, and of course the Tennessee Titans, Derrick Henry, going to Kansas City in Arrowhead to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. This is an exciting week. Of course, we're just a couple weeks away from the big extravaganza known as the Super Bowl. And these are the four remaining teams with their hopes to get to the Super Bowl. Should be some good games this week. I don't think I'm as excited for this week of championship games as I've been in the past. Obviously, part of that is because the Patriots are not here. But the second part of that is I do feel like there are some heavy favorites in regards to these games. I think just looking at the spreads themselves, Kansas City and San Francisco are both at least favored by a touchdown, 7 points each on both sides. So it's going to take quite the effort for the road teams to go into those places and win in their home stadiums and win. Tennessee to go to Arrowhead and win is going to be a large task. And then Green Bay to go to San Francisco and win is going to be a large task. So, guys, before I dive into the in-depth preview and prediction for the game, straight up and versus the spread, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL content just like this, and weekly NFL picks every single NFL season, and comment your opinion. Who do you guys see winning the games? Who do you guys have winning the NFC Championship? Who do you guys have winning the AFC Championship? Titans, Chiefs, Packers, Niners. Let me know in the comment section below. I don't have much else to say. We'll get to the comments in between the games. Let's get into the in-depth previews of the Conference Championship. Let's start off with the Tennessee Titans and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, the AFC Championship. The Chiefs are favored by 7 in this game, and they did play this season. In fact, both of these games actually were both previously played, which is an interesting part. So both of these conference championships are rematches, the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. So the AFC Championship, Tennessee Titans traveling to Kansas City. Kansas City is minus 7 points going into this game, which is actually the lower of the two spreads this weekend. So the history between these two teams, Tennessee, they have won 4 games in a row between the two teams. They won this season in week number 10, 35-32. They also won in the 2017 playoffs, the year 2018, 22-21. Marcus Mariota passing to himself for the big touchdown, if you remember that huge play. It was also a miraculous comeback in that one, and that also kind of started the Derrick Henry is a monster in January conversation back all the way a couple of years ago. Also in that game, Patrick Mahomes was not the starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. It was Alex Smith, just so you know. So not a lot of carryover in terms of playoff games between these Titans and these Chiefs, because Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs, a lot different than Alex Smith's Chiefs. In week 10, let's go over some of the key statistics. Patrick Mahomes, it was his first game back from injury in that one. He was 36 for 50 for 446 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was sacked twice in that game, but for the most part, I went back, I watched the entirety of the game, and not a lot of pressure in that game on Patrick Mahomes. He had a lot of success, and he lit up the secondary of the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill, this was kind of his coming out party, specifically at the end of the game in the fourth quarter, when he had to make a big drive to get the Titans to win that game with like 25 seconds left. Pass it to Adam Humphries for the game-winning touchdown. Tannehill, 13 for 19, 181 and 2 touchdowns. A good game overall, made a couple big throws, but nothing spectacular. Running back position, Derrick Henry it's kind of interesting because in that game, he did a lot of what he's been doing now. He nearly had 200 yards in this game, 23 attempts, 188 yards, and a 8.2 yards per carry for 2 touchdowns. This was even before Derrick Henry kind of like started going full ham versus the rest of the league. Like, he was playing well this entire season, but it really took until those last like 5-6 weeks where he started going off. This was in week 10, so a little bit before that, and this may have even started that run a little bit. But after this game, they fully committed to Derrick Henry as that, we're just going to go with this guy. We're going to run him into the ground, and we're going to see how far he can take us. So in this game, he had a massive performance. He also had a 68-yard touchdown. And really, if you take that 68-yard touchdown out of his performance, he still had a great game. He still had 122 yards and 5.5 yards per carry. So no, this wasn't all just on one run. Derrick Henry was efficient for much of the day, and that bodes well for their AFC Championship matchup. Damian Williams on the ground had 19 attempts, which seems like more than usual. 77 yards and 4.1 yards per carry in the game. Not a bad performance at all. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill had a massive game. 11 catches, 157 yards, and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 7 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. So both the main weapons for Mahomes had a touchdown. Both had good games. Hardman also had a long touchdown. 63-yard touchdown. Mahomes, it was the jump pass play. If you remember that, he had to jump up and then throw it. It was pretty spectacular. And then for Tennessee, this is interesting. A.J. Brown wasn't really a huge threat until a couple weeks after this game. I think actually the week after this game. And then he had that run of like a spectacular 4 or 5 game stretch where he's going for 100 yards a game. It almost seemed like A.J. Brown only had 1 catch in this game for 17 yards. So look out for that in Kansas City. If the Titans want to win this game, he might have to have a better performance than he did in this one. And Ferkser and Jonnu Smith, one of the big key takeaways from this game was that the tight ends were most effective in the passing game for Tennessee. They had 7 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. That's accounting for 7 of the 13 completions, so over half of what Tannehill was able to do in that first game. So Jonnu Smith and Ferkser both have been big in these playoffs in the divisional and wild card round. Look out for them. They have to have a big game. And Chris Jones defensively had 2 sacks as the standout. He also had a forced fumble early in the game. Now, other key takeaways, there was a fumble for a touchdown in that game for the Tennessee Titans. Evans returned a Damian Williams fumble for a touchdown. There was a mess up on a late field goal by Kansas City, which led to the long drive by Tannehill at the end of the game. There was also a missed extra point for the Kansas City Chiefs by Butker. There was a lot of penalties in that game, which I don't really see happening again because lots of penalties don't really seem to happen in the playoffs because they let more things go. So that's good for both teams, but most of the penalties actually went against the road team, the Kansas City Chiefs. So look out for that. Penalties early on in the game really set back Kansas City from not making this game in particular a blowout, because Kansas City, I think, was up 10-0 early in the game. Tennessee was able to come back with that fumble return, and then the whole game kind of blew up. It was even all the way until the end, and Tennessee was able to capitalize with the game-winning drive. Now, when we look at this game, Tennessee's offense versus Kansas City's defense, I think we all have to start with, obviously, Derrick Henry and the Kansas City run defense. Like, how is this going to go down? Is Kansas City going to be able to stop him this time around, or is Derrick Henry going to go off like he did versus Baltimore, like he did versus New England? Well, the interesting stat here is I don't really love these type of stats, but this stat I think is very interesting because this is different when it comes to the Titans. Like, I don't like the when this team runs for 100 yards, they win. Because most of the time when you run for 100 yards, you're going to win because you're running at the end of the game when you're winning the game. So obviously, I don't really like those. But with Derrick Henry, that hasn't been the case. Like, when he is going off early in the game, they are winning the game. So actually, Derrick Henry, when he runs for 100 yards, the Titans are 8-0. Most of the time, that's early in the game. So if Derrick Henry runs for 100 yards, they're likely to win this game. If they don't, it's going to have to be an incredible performance by Kansas City's offense to put up a lot of points. Now, when looking at the matchup, Kansas City's run defense is still one of the worst in the league, ranking 29th in DVOA. Henry led the NFL in yards after contact and Kansas City's defense is 28th in adjusted line yards. So what does that mean? Adjusted line yards measures the push that a defensive line gets versus the run game. So the big boys, they're not really getting it done for Kansas City this season in terms of pushing versus the run game. Well, if Derrick Henry is not getting tackled early in the line, the fact that he is leading the NFL in yards after contact means that if he's able to get to that second level of Kansas City's linebackers, or the third, like potentially breaking through the linebackers to the second level to the safeties or the corners to the secondary, then he's not going to go down. I mean, we know this with Derrick Henry. You need to have a group of people to tackle him. You need to have 1, 2 people to tackle him, or it has to be a spectacular tackle by a linebacker or a defensive lineman. So if Kansas City is poor at adjusted line yards, which measures the yards early in the down, basically early in the play, the defensive line, if that defensive line isn't blowing up the run, Henry's going to have plenty of opportunity to hit these big plays for big yardage, going for big plays, right? So Tennessee, they rank 4th in adjusted line yards offensively, offensive line-wise. So their offensive line has the 4th best push in the run game of all offensive lines in the league. And that's just measuring the regular season, not including the postseason. Now the Titans, they were effective in this game. When I went back and watched, they were effective at running the ball outside a lot. Outside, running stretch runs and running some tosses and some outside zones. And I think this was effective, just going through my mind here, versus Kansas City, because Kansas City's linebackers are quite slow, so they're not really great at moving side to side. Also, the strength of Kansas City's defensive line, at least in terms of the run game, would definitely be in the middle where Chris Jones is. And Chris Jones did play in that game. So if you're running away from Chris Jones, you're likely to have more success. Now, looking at NFL.com's Cynthia Freeland, who is a pretty good analytical expert on NFL.com, she had some pretty interesting stats here. So Henry has amassed 729 of his 1,917 regular season yards, and that includes the regular season and playoff yards, when 8 or more defenders are in the box. So basically, Derrick Henry leads the league in yards when the box is stacked. So when a box is stacked, that means that there's 8 people or more in the box. 7 people is typical. 8 people, you have a stacked box. So he actually led the NFL in stacked box yards by more than 400 yards. Surprisingly, actually, number 2 was Sony Michelle, which I go back to an issue with the Patriots in their rushing attack, because everyone knows Michelle's going to run it. So, but Michelle was second. He had 329 yards for stacked boxes. Derrick Henry had 729, so more than 400. Henry's 135 rushing attempts versus stacked boxes equal the most in the NFL as well. So the Titans really don't care if you have a stacked box or not. They're still going to run the football, and that's what they've been doing all playoffs long. Baltimore stack box, New England stack box, it doesn't matter. They're going to run it at the stack box because they want to run the ball. Henry averages 5.4 yards per attempt for stack boxes, which is absolutely incredible, and I think that speaks to his ability to break tackles. So, the key interesting fact of this, which Cynthia brings up, is that over the regular season and the playoffs, no defense actually allowed a higher yards per carry to running backs with a stacked box than the Kansas City Chiefs. So when the Chiefs actually wanted to stack the box, they were still giving up 4.7 yards per carry, which is awful. Like if you're putting people in there to stop the run and you're still giving up yardage, that's not a good sign. So they didn't fare well in run defense at all. They averaged the 4th worst yards per carry given up, 4.9 yards per carry. So overall, in the run game, an offense for Tennessee, I think they will be able to run the ball. I think they'll have a lot of success doing it. I wouldn't be shocked if Kansas City at times was able to slow it down or force a 3 and out, because New England, Baltimore did that as well. But there is going to be times where Derrick Henry does have the big play, where they do go and just, you're going to have Derrick Henry running for a 30-yard gain occasionally. It's going to happen because Kansas City's not good at it. Tennessee is good at it. And the way that Tennessee is playing, it's pretty spectacular. So, offensive line-wise. So, they're going to get the push. They're going to win that battle. more times than not. But the interesting part to me is, if Kansas City can stop them just occasionally, what's going to happen when Tennessee has to pass the ball? And how does Tennessee mix in the pass with the run? How do they mix in the play action with the run game as well? So when we look at the battle between the offensive line and the pass rush of Kansas City and Tennessee, Kansas City is 10th in sack rate. They're 11th in sacks this season. So they're one of the 10 best pass rushes in the league. Tennessee, they need to avoid 3rd and long because they're not good in those situations. They need to stay ahead of the chains. So I'm thinking they need to run the ball early and they need to have success running the ball. And if they're going to pass it, I think they need to catch Kansas City off guard with a deep play down the field, pass it to your running backs, throw screens to Henry, throw to your tight end, whatever it may be. But you need to stay ahead of the chains and you need to stay out of 3rd and 7+. Because when Kansas City gets in that scenario, just as I said with Baltimore and New England, and just as it turned out to be that New England and Baltimore were able to stop Tennessee in those situations, they were able to get after Tennessee in those situations, it just rarely happened. That's the thing, right? So Chris Jones, actually specifically when you look back at the Patriots game, the reason Tennessee was able to run for 200 yards but still not put up that many points was because when New England did stop them, they were forcing them off the field on 3rd down. So 3rd down is absolutely crucial, 3rd and 7+. And why I go back to this is when you go back and watch the first game between Tennessee and Kansas City, one of the biggest plays of the game happened there. Kansas City dominated on 3rd down. They had a strip sack by Chris Jones. They forced mistakes on 3rd down, and Tannehill made mistakes. It's just obviously that's what's going to happen when you're in 3rd and long. Tennessee is also 32nd in sack rate, so they're not good at protecting the passer in those long situations. Kansas City, this is the strength of their defense. They're 5th in passer rating. They're tied for 8th in allowing 20-plus yard pass plays. So that speaks to me that Kansas City, they're good at not giving up big pass plays down the field, and that's what Tennessee wants to do when they are going to pass the ball. They want to go for the big play action bomb down the field like they did last week to Raymond versus Baltimore. But like I said, when you're passing the ball, I think you're going to see a lot of the tight end action. You're going to see Ferkser. You're going to see Jonnu Smith. I think Tyrann Mathieu will probably be on Jonnu Smith, but I could be wrong there. And I do think that one of Brown and Davis are going to have a big game because if they're going to convert some of these big plays, they're going to need to have those guys win their one-on-one matchups, specifically when Kansas City plays man-to-man coverage on the outside, and specifically when Tennessee, they might be running, but Kansas City gets caught in the run, and you have those one-on-one shots. Tennessee needs to be able to take advantage. So I like Tennessee's offense overall versus Kansas City's defense. I think they might struggle a little bit in the pass game, but I do think their run game will be able to dominate enough to where they will be able to put up points. Okay? So Kansas City's offense versus Tennessee's defense. This is the strategy if I'm the Chiefs' offense. I am not running the ball all game. I don't care. I might run it twice. I might run it once. I'm just going to say F the run. I'm playing shotgun. I'm going Mahomes. This is your game. I'm like I said it last week with the Russell Wilson Seahawks, which, by the way, they didn't listen to me and they lost. Second, okay, Tom Brady 2014 it. Just pass. I don't care. Don't run the ball, okay? When the Chiefs did run the ball versus Tennessee in the first game, I brought up Damian Williams' stats. He was effective, but I think they ran it far too much in that game. And I think if they would have passed it more, they would have won that game. The Chiefs, they were effective in running the ball outside. So when they did run the ball, like pitches and tosses specifically, I found were most successful. Because when you want to run on Tennessee, you want to avoid Casey and Daquan Jones. Those are their two best defensive linemen. If I'm the Titans, if we flip this, Tennessee needs to sell out for the pass. If I'm Tennessee, I don't care if you run it. I'm going to force Damian Williams to run the ball 25 times because I'm going to have a better chance to win it if I'm Tennessee. I'm just playing pass all day. That means I have my pass personnel out there, And I'm just saying, Mahomes, we're going to sell out for you. You need to check to a run every time to try and beat us. Now, can the Titans get after Mahomes? Because that's probably the biggest question in this game, I think. Kansas City is 4th in adjusted sack rate this year, and Tennessee is 14th in adjusted sack rate defensively. So Kansas City's offensive line is better at protecting Mahomes than Tennessee's defensive line or pass rush is better at getting after the quarterback. So that's key there. Now, I think even more so than getting after the quarterback, a big deal is keeping him in the pocket. You don't want those extended plays by Mahomes where he's escaping to the right or to the left and he's able to find a deep pass down the field. You need to keep him in the pocket. That's even more important than pressuring him. When the Texans allowed him to escape the pocket, not only was he effective passing, but he also ran the ball very effectively versus Houston because they played a lot of man coverage. Now with Tennessee, I found it interesting. They played a lot of zone. They got torn up. I think they'll go to more man in this game than zone. But my struggle is, Tennessee doesn't have one of the greatest secondaries in the world, but it's not bad. I do think that they can play man on occasion and have some success, but I don't think it's going to be overly successful. I think whatever Tennessee tries to do in coverage, they're going to have to be very creative. They're going to have to confuse Mahomes more than just beat Mahomes. I don't think you're going to be able to just line up and when Mahomes knows you're playing man, you're going to beat them. I think you need to be confusing. Dean Pease, Mike Vrabel, they need to come up with a game plan where they're showing blitz and they're bringing guys, they're not bringing guys. They need to be creative with that because I don't think if you just line up, you're going to win. I think Mahomes will win, and I think the Chiefs will win their matchups if that happens. Now, I do think Tennessee will be better in terms of keeping Mahomes in the pocket because they're better coached that way, and they're better, like Dean Pease is better at scheming up that sort of thing, I would think, than even a Romeo Crennel. And I will say this, Houston's defense, Houston's pass rush, not very good. Houston's pass rush is one of the worst in the league. J.J. Watt was not himself, and he was not on the field all the time. Tennessee's is better than Houston's. Tennessee's not one of the top 5 pass rushes, but it is better. It is in the top 15, so that's good to know. Tennessee needs to get much better out of their red zone defense. Where they have been good is 3rd down and 4th down, where they rank in the top 10 in both. But their red zone defense this year only ranked 28th. That was a big issue for Houston. When I talked about the Houston-Kansas City game last week, Houston was ranked 31st or 32nd in the league. So if Tennessee wants to beat Kansas City, they need to force field goals because they're going to get the yardage is going to happen. Kansas City's going to move the ball. But when they're inside the 20, Tennessee needs to really just not give up touchdowns. I mean, it sounds simple, but this might be their best way of playing defense, which is scary because when you look at this game, whoever has the time of possession is likely to win. And the way I'm thinking about it is, if I feel like Kansas City is going to be able to move the ball, but it's up to the red zone to determine if they're going to score, I think Kansas City is going to dominate the possession of the ball, which means that that's going to put pressure on Derrick Henry and the Titans to score if they're not in control of the game script. Because Tennessee wants to be in control of the clock, right? But if they're not in control of the clock, and Mahomes is, and the Chiefs are, it's interesting. I don't know. So looking at some individual matchups, I think that Adoree Jackson will cover Tyreek Hill, and you might see some Byard on top in double team coverage there, and then you'll have Kelsey. I don't know who will cover him, maybe Vaccaro. But Tennessee does not rank well in terms of covering tight ends. They rank 22nd in receptions and 26th in yards. So I would expect Kelsey to have a big game in this one again, because I expect that the Titans will not give up the big play like they did the first time versus Kansas City. I think they'll try and take away Hill with Jackson and Byard or whatever and double team him, and then that will allow Kelsey to have the one-on-one on a favorable matchup. So I expect Kelsey to have a big game and possibly Sammy Watkins. But I don't expect Tyreek Hill to have the huge game because I think Dean Pease is smarter than that. What the Titans did in the first game, interesting enough, was early in the game they kind of allowed a lot of short completions. Then they were getting burnt by short completions. And then all of a sudden they were giving up big plays. That's just not what you want to happen. I think if the Titans want to win this game, they need to win special teams. They need to win the turnover battle. Otherwise, I know it sounds funny because I haven't picked the Titans either of the last 2 weeks. But the reason I'm saying Kansas City will win, I think the Titans will be very close. I think the Titans can win this game. But the thing is here, I think Kansas City is a team they haven't faced in terms of they can pass the ball so great and they can move the ball and score so quickly that it doesn't matter how long they hold the ball for. It doesn't matter how much really Tennessee controls the possession or controls the tempo or any of that. Versus Baltimore couldn't play from behind. I knew this. I told you this. New England, they didn't have an offense. So both of those teams were totally different from Kansas City. With Kansas City, it doesn't matter how often they get the ball. They'll score. I have Kansas City winning 27-21 over Tennessee. I do think that Tennessee will cover, but I think Kansas City will win. I think Derrick Henry will have another great game, but I also think Mahomes will just be too much, and the passing game of the Chiefs will be too much for the Titans defense. So I'm going with Kansas City to win 27-21. All right, let's get to the comment section before I move on to the next game. Chiefs Rule says we have a better offense than Tennessee. Derek is carrying them. Kevin Durkant says, gimme KC. Titans can't stop them. Kobe says it's still Tom Brady. The Ravens only scored 1 touchdown. Lamar Jackson only scored once in the 4th quarter. I don't know what he's talking about there. Julian says, they may just mask Kelsey as a key contributor and throw it to Hill or Mecole instead. What else? Rebecca's in the chat. Chad's in the chat. Crow is in the chat. Chad says Chiefs fans are stupid. Katana with the big super chat. He gave me a $2 super chat earlier, and he said tighten up. And on this one, with a $5 donation, Katana says another stat to consider that teams that score 50-plus points in a playoff game are 1-6 the following game. That's interesting. I don't know how much that has to do with this game in particular, but that's an interesting stat. Titans have not gone away from the run even when they've been down this season. Also, Titans have scored touchdowns on the last 12 red zone trips and no field goal tries. Best red zone conversion in the league. Yes, that's true. Yeah, Tennessee has the best red zone conversion in the league. I think they're both going to score, and I don't actually think that the Chiefs are going to get wildly out in front if they're winning. If so, I mean, it's going to be difficult for the Titans to win, and that would be the worst case scenario. I think it will be pretty back and forth. I just think at the end of the day, I'm going to take the potent passing attack of Mahomes over the run game of the Titans. But that's just my opinion. I mean, I could see you going with the Titans, as I said. I think this is a really good matchup. I mean, when you look at it at the end of the day, when you're scoring points in the modern NFL, it's far more consistent to score points when you're throwing the ball than running the ball. I mean, again, I'll point it out as many times as I have to. The Titans offense scored 14 points versus the Patriots, and they had like 200 yards. So, I mean, they had 200 yards rushing, and they still only scored 14 points on offense. Like, that's how inconsistent a running game can be. You could have a great running game, but still not score that many points in today's NFL. So it really depends. And I'm not comparing Kansas City's defense to New England's, but I'm just saying that's what happens when you run the ball primarily. I think the Titans' defense is really a big reason they won versus Baltimore, to be honest. What else we have here? Rob says percentage chance Niners win number 6. I'll give it a... I don't want to spoil it, bro. Van the Man says, love the show and Green Bay is going down. Fire. Thank you. I don't really want to spoil it because then I'll be telling you who I'm picking this week. Ben says, B. Moore was supposed to score 50 on us too, and we retired the GOAT. Well, I'm only saying Kansas City scores 27. Rebecca says, are people forgetting that defense is just important as offense? Kansas City offensively dominating, but I trust the Titans line and special teams more. But Rebecca, you also have to say that the Chiefs are pretty good in at least one aspect on defense, and that's pass defense. They are good in that aspect. And when you have that good of an offense, your defense just has to be okay. Chad with $4.99. Kansas City fans are cringeworthy, he says. Mitchell with the big donation. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate the super chats. Feeling the love today. Mitchell says Green Bay and Kansas City. Caleb says Titans to the Super Bowl. Julian says Kansas City defense isn't as good as San Francisco. Henry's going to run over some fool Sunday. Kobe says, I feel like our defense being overlooked. We're pretty tight as of few games. I don't think you said that correctly. Titans were scoring 30-plus points per game in the regular season since week 7. Why do people keep saying the Titans can't score many points is a tired take. I just think Kansas City will score more. I have them scoring 21, but as I said in my analysis, I feel like Kansas City will have the football more than Tennessee. I think Tennessee's offense really is subject on having the ball a lot. Time of possession. Kansas City's is not. Trish says, let's go Chiefs. Hugo says, hey Mitch, are you going to do a video on Luke Kuechly? Dude was the best linebacker the last 20 years. Possibly. We'll have to see. All right. Imagine, man, you stink. All right. NFC Championship. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure that you do Gronk Spike the like button and subscribe to the Bottom Line View if you are new. I would highly appreciate that. Okay. NFC Championship game. The Green Bay Packers versus the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers favored by over a touchdown. 7.5 points at home. This is a Shanahan versus LaFleur matchup. This is I guess you could call it student versus master, because technically the master of LaFleur is Shanahan, because Shanahan was over top of LaFleur, and LaFleur took the same offense, at least the same base offense, to Green Bay. So what I like about this coaching matchup is there is a lot more familiarity in the game plans of both teams. LaFleur will say to Pettine, hey, maybe they're going to do this in this formation. Shanahan likes to do this. This is the way he thinks. And on certain big downs, I think it'll be interesting to see how both offensive coaches impact the way that they play defense. Now, the Niners won the first game. They played earlier this year. It was a blowout. It was a lot. It was to a little. Jimmy G, 253 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first game. Pretty good overall game. Kittle had 6 receptions for 129 yards and a touchdown. Interesting to note that neither team actually ran the ball very effectively, specifically Green Bay, who did not have a good day on the ground. But really, the Niners either didn't have a great day on the ground, which is interesting because Green Bay, as we'll get to in a bit, is not very good versus the run. So, San Francisco's offense versus Green Bay's defense. I think there are advantages for one side and there are advantages to another side. So, the advantage for San Francisco's offense is running the football, and it's George Kittle. Okay? And they're going to try and expose these two things. With Green Bay's defense, their advantages are their edge rush and their pass defense in general. And most specifically, their pass defense on the outside versus San Francisco's receivers. So Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders versus Jari Alexander, Tramon Williams, King, Amos, all these guys in the secondary. I would favor Green Bay over the receivers without Kittle, but I would favor Kittle versus the matchup that he has in this game, to break it down there simply. So McGlinchey and McGlinchey and Staley, left and right tackle, Staley, left tackle, McGlinchey, right tackle, are going to have to play Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. Now, these guys are only going to become a big deal if San Francisco is not able to run the ball or have effective early down play calls. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think these guys are going to become a massive difference maker in this game, only on maybe a few plays, because I just trust in Kyle Shanahan and his play calling on early downs and their ability to run the ball, that I just can't see him putting Jimmy and this offensive line in bad situations. I think it would have to take a special performance by Green Bay to force Jimmy G in a lot of uncomfortable positions. I think the Smith bros, Shanahan will scheme up a way to make these guys as limited on the game as possible. Now, what Green Bay needs to do, in my opinion, is they need to force Jimmy Garoppolo to beat them. It's not that I don't think Jimmy G is bad. I think he's good, but he's also looked shaky at certain moments, and he looked shaky in that game versus the Vikings. But what the Vikings weren't able to do was stop the run. They weren't able to get any sort of push versus the run game. And my concern is that Green Bay won't be able to either, because Green Bay's defense is bad versus the run. They're 31st in adjusted line yards in that push on the D-line. Again, measuring the push that a defensive line gets up front versus an offensive line. They're second to last, Green Bay. And they're 23rd in run DVOA. So they're one of the worst run defenses in the league, and specifically that all stems from the defensive line. Coleman, Breida, Mostert, I think should have a good game in this one. I was shocked when I looked back and saw the stats in the first game that they weren't overly effective, and maybe LaFleur somehow, some way, because he knows this scheme so well, can help out and say, you know what, we need to lock down these type of runs to have a chance. Maybe coaching will come into this a little bit. But then again, Gary Kubiak was on the Vikings side, and it didn't really seem to matter. It just seems like Shanahan has new runs and new schemes every week where he can take advantage of a defense. I think that George Kittle's going to have a big game as well. When you look at it, I don't know really who can cover him on Green Bay's side of things. I certainly don't think it's going to be Martinez. It could be Amos, maybe, possibly Savage, the rookie. But I don't really see either guy one-on-one handling Kittle on a consistent basis. Plus, if you have them in the box versus Kittle, Kittle can easily take them out in the run game. It's kind of similar to the Gronk scenarios of the past, where if you want to play these guys tight and you want to play a specific style, they can just run the ball at you and you're going to be stuck, specifically if you play a safety on him. Green Bay is 21st in receptions and 20th in yards versus the tight end. That's also a big reason why I believe Kittle will go off again in this game. Green Bay's going to have to commit multiple people to stopping Kittle, but I only think they can do that in third down situations. If I'm San Francisco, if I'm Green Bay, I force San Francisco to beat you with Garoppolo and to beat you throwing to the outside. So if I'm Green Bay, I'm doubling Kittle on every third down, and I am taking away, putting whatever zones there, whatever I have to do to take away the slot receiver, because Jimmy is one of the better guys in between the numbers. But when it comes outside the numbers, that's Green Bay's strength, and that also makes you hold the ball longer to get your pass rush to the quarterback, right? So it's going to be Alexander versus Sanders or Samuel, and then Tramon Williams on the other. I would guess that it's going to be Alexander versus Samuel at times, but then at other times it will be Alexander versus Sanders, and then Tramon Williams versus Samuel, and then Tramon Williams versus Sanders, depending on who lines up in the slot. But those will be the two primary matchups that you look towards. And Jimmy, I think, is going to have to throw to those guys on third and long situations. But going back to what I said earlier, I just don't see that happening too commonly, which is why I have the edge going to San Francisco's offense, because I believe that their run game is going to be a lot for Green Bay to handle, and it's going to stretch Green Bay's defense thin to the point to where it's not going to be a lot of situations where Green Bay is going to be able to take advantage of their matchups that they like. So San Francisco's offense has the edge on Green Bay's defense. Now, Green Bay's offense versus San Francisco's defense. Rodgers needs to be special. I'm just going to put that out there. For the Green Bay Packers to win, Aaron Rodgers needs to have a great game. He has to have one of his best games he's ever had. Because when I look at the defensive matchup versus the offensive matchup, Rodgers really only has Davante Adams. And Davante Adams is likely going to draw Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman is first according to Pro Football Focus this year. He's allowing a 46.8 passer rating, and he had another interception last week. He's playing at the peak of his powers right now. Maybe not quite 2013 Richard Sherman, but he's still a very, very good corner. And he actually is a good matchup for Davante Adams because Adams isn't really super quick or fast. He's really good on his release. And Sherman is a really good physical corner at the line of scrimmage. So that's a good matchup. And they're both kind of taller guys. I think Sherman, with his intelligence, should be able to limit Adams. I'm not going to say shut down Adams, but limit Adams' production. And I don't think that San Francisco will have to double Adams as commonly as Seattle needed to. The interesting thing here is I thought Green Bay had an awesome advantage over Seattle in the pass game, as they did and as it showed, because they couldn't play man-to-man on occasion, right? Well, Seattle couldn't do that. And on third down, when they did, Rodgers and Adams went to work. Well, San Francisco has been able to play man, specifically recently versus Minnesota in Diggs and Thielen, and they did a very good job. I think one of the underrated aspects of San Francisco is their corner play, and I think it has been very good, and it was very good versus Minnesota. And I think they can play man when they need to. Really, when you look at it, San Francisco, they've allowed the least yards per attempt. They've allowed the least 20-plus yard passes down the field. What does Green Bay like to do? They like to run the ball. They like to set up the play action strike deep down the field. Well, San Francisco, one, their pass rush is too good. They're going to get to the quarterback. Two, this is the least 20-plus yard passes allowed for a defense. So you're not going to be able to hit those deep strikes down the field as commonly. And if you take Adams away, whether that's with Sherman or the occasional double team, maybe you move Sherman around so he takes a different receiver on the occasional down, I don't see like Jimmy Graham, Valdez-Scantling, Lazard, whoever it is. I don't see any of these guys having a huge advantage over a defensive back of San Francisco. I said this at the beginning of the season. I've been saying it all year. Green Bay does not have a great complementary number 2 weapon that makes defenses worry about you, and their passing game isn't really that scary. It's just Aaron Rodgers making plays. And we've seen this before in big games. When Aaron Rodgers is by himself and really doesn't have a lot else to go to, they're going to lose the game. I mean, we saw that in Atlanta in 2016, the NFC Championship. We've seen that versus Seattle before. I just feel like a lot of it is on Aaron Rodgers on third down or in big passing downs where he just doesn't have a lot of help around him, or not a very complex passing game to help him out. So all of that being said, when we look at the defense, when we look at the offensive side of the ball for Green Bay versus San Francisco's defense, the place they need to have success is running the football. If they can run the ball now, that's going to make the game close. If Green Bay can somehow be able to run the ball with Jones and Williams, I think that I think they can have success. Like, I think they can keep this game interesting. Jones and Williams need to have success on first or second down, need to have success on those early downs to keep it in third and manageable so that Rodgers is not having to drop back and get absolutely destroyed by Bosa, Ford, Buckner, Armstead. If it's like 3rd and 4 and it's just a quick little slant over the middle, you're not worried about Bosa coming for your head. That is where it's going to be tough. In the run game, Green Bay actually statistically does have the advantage. Green Bay is 6th in adjusted line yards versus San Francisco, who's 13th. And San Francisco is 11th in run DVOA and 21st in yards per carry. So if San Francisco does have a weakness, it is stopping the run. They did a great job versus Dalvin Cook, and I do think Kyle Shanahan, knowing Matt LaFleur's scheme, will help them defend the run. But I actually think that Aaron Rodgers would be able to take advantage of some of these plays that Kirk Cousins wasn't able to, which to me means that the game should be more competitive. But again, the Vikings had more talent around their quarterback than Aaron Rodgers has talent around him. And if you're going to run versus San Francisco, it needs to be up the middle because the wide 9 formation that the 49ers run defends the outside very well. Cynthia Freeland also had a couple of statistics that I found interesting, and it had to do with the pressure matchup on Aaron Rodgers. So the offensive line versus the defensive line, the pass rush versus the pass protection. Rodgers posted the 4th lowest completion percentage among qualified quarterbacks when under pressure. So that's 37.8%. When Rodgers was pressured, only 37% of his passes were completed. When Rodgers held onto the ball, he held onto the ball for an average of 3.8 seconds per pass play, which was the longest in the NFL. So, what does this mean to me? Well, if pressure comes quick on Rodgers, which could possibly happen versus the best pass rush in the league, Rodgers, he likes to hold on to the ball, 1, because his receivers don't create separation, and 2, because he's looking for the big play down the field. And that's what the offense wants, to look for the big play. But if pressure comes quickly, they're not a very good offense at dinking and dunking and throwing underneath, which they need to do if they're going to have success. It's a good matchup because Green Bay's offensive line is pretty good. It ranks 10th in sack rate, and San Francisco ranks 2nd. So if Green Bay can somehow shut down this pass rush, they also have a chance, but I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to have to come through the run game, and then through the run game, you wear down the pass rush. Through the run game, you make them a little bit more worried, and then you're able to pass the ball more effectively. Another big stat, and the last big stat I will give you about this game, in the first matchup, the Packers were horrible on third down. They were 1 for 15 on third down versus San Francisco. They ranked 23rd on the season. 23rd. San Francisco ranked 2nd on the season. But what did we see versus Seattle? Green Bay converted a lot of the third downs. So, if they're going to win, they need to come up big on third down. And if I'm looking at, okay, if Green Bay is not successful in the run game, that's forcing a lot of third downs, putting San Francisco at an advantage. San Francisco should be able to shut down Green Bay based on all these matchups that I just gave you. San Francisco should win the game. San Francisco, I think, should win the game and should win the game quite easily. I think it would take Aaron Rodgers' miraculous performance to win. I'm going San Francisco 30, Green Bay 17, and that means San Francisco will win and cover this NFC Championship game, moving on to the Super Bowl. I think the better of the two matchups is the Titans versus the Chiefs. This game, I do expect San Francisco to win comfortably. But, again, if some of the things go in favor of the Green Bay Packers, like running the football, like stopping the run, they'll have success. And they'll keep it close. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed, Gronk Spike, the like button, and, of course, I already put it up, but subscribe to The Bottom Line View for more NFL vids just like this. Let's read the comments one more time, and then we'll get out of here for the live stream. Rebecca says, I'm prepared for Aaron Rodgers to pull some Aaron Rodgers shit. Also prepared for the refs to help them out. Julian says Aaron Rodgers should retire if he doesn't win, so I'm guessing he's going to retire. Do I think the Niners can score 40? Yes, but I wouldn't put it at a high percentage. I doubt it. Kevin Durkant says Packers can't stop the Niners' run game, nor can they handle their pass rush. Chad says it was glorious. Don't know what he's talking about. Mr. Singh has the Packers winning 27-20. Robot guy was in the chat. Kevin Durkant has the Niners winning 35-16. Kevin Durkant also got his jersey. Bro, you take a picture with the jersey. I'll post it on a video. Chad says, been fun. Take care, people. Follow me on IG. Tighten up. When are we going to do our next Madden stream, guys? Who's MMG? Rebecca says, the more I listen to Mitch, the better I feel about this game. I have anxiety about this weekend, but hearing someone talk through it calms me. Well, that's good. Honestly, I wouldn't mind any of these teams winning this weekend. Like, I don't really think I have any biases when it comes to who I want to win. Honestly, I would be cool with any of these teams winning the Super Bowl. Rich G says, well put, Mitch. Rodgers will have to be really, really special Sunday if Green Bay is going to pull it out. Rebecca says Niners will get 4+ sacks along with 4 touchdowns to match. What was my least favorite Super Bowl? I have to think of all the Super Bowls I've watched. I don't know. I've enjoyed every Super Bowl in its own way. I think, honestly, the one that I enjoyed least was the last time that Aaron Rodgers was there. I just remember the least about it. Like, I was the least enthralled. I think I was, like, during the game, not always watching it and stuff. The Packers, Steelers, Super Bowl, what was that? Super Bowl 2010. Don't know the number, honestly, off by heart, but that game. Ultra has the Niners 35-21. I just think they match up great versus Green Bay. They obliterated them not long ago. I think it'll be closer, but I still have the Niners winning and covering. Chad says, Titans trash, but in the title game, you're an idiot. What? Ultra loved Super Bowl 51. Rebecca says, I would think you would want the Niners because we only are one away from catching the Pats. I think you would want. McGregor or Cowboy? I think McGregor's going to win. Super Bowl 45. Thank you. Am I excited for the XFL? Honestly, not really. Wouldn't want. That makes more sense. No, I want the 49ers to win because I like Jimmy. And I like Kyle. Sure, if you want, Kevin, you can. I'll post them on a... I don't know, it's up to you, I guess. I'll post them on a video. How much is the average Super Bowl ad price this year? I honestly have no idea, but it's very high. I don't think it's much higher than last year. I heard something about Super Bowl commercials that is a little different, but I don't know. I don't know if it's trending down, trending up, trending the same. I don't really know. I honestly don't know. I don't think I'll hear about that till after. When is that fight? I'm thinking Niners Chiefs. Yep. What's up, A Human? I could definitely take AB. Talks a lot of smack, though. Yeah, the West. AFC. It could be AFC versus NFC West game. Colts. Party's lost it. Who do I want in the Super Bowl? Honestly... Not that I'm a Chiefs fan, but I do think it would be most exciting if the Chiefs and Mahomes were in the Super Bowl. And, like, I think I'm picking the game I want to see. Even though I wouldn't mind seeing Rodgers there either. But I do feel like Niners-Chiefs would be the best Super Bowl. Although I think Rodgers versus Mahomes would also be very fascinating. As much as the Titans are a great story... It's not like I would hate it if they were in the Super Bowl. I just think they're, outside of Titans fans, I don't really see them being like a national story that's very like interesting other than the underdog factor. I just think the game would be more entertaining if it was one of those three or one of those two matchups. But if I had to choose, I think it's 49ers Chiefs as the best game. A Human wants a podcast. Jake Paul or AB? I mean, you would think Jake Paul would win, but Jake Paul I thought would win his other fight, so I don't know. Yep, Tannehill's going to have to step up. Anthony says, Mitch, you called it before the season started that the Niners will make it. You still think the Niners can win it all? Yeah, I do. I think they're the most complete team. I think Kansas City can beat them, but otherwise I think they would beat any other team. I think Kansas City, I'm saying I think they can beat Kansas City, but I think Kansas City would have the best chance of beating them just because of their explosive offensive ability. But I do think they are more well-rounded than Kansas City. And I don't know who I'd pick in that game yet until I actually go over it. But I'm happy. That's also a good thing about San Francisco making the Super Bowl because I'm one of the only people on planet Earth that actually predicted that might happen. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, Rich, that's the type of game I like. I like the heavyweight fight. Donald or J.J. Watt? In a fight? Donald. In an actual fight. As a football player, J.J. Watt in his prime. But in a fight, Donald. Which of the Boza brothers? That's a good question. I think Nick. I think Nick's smarter. I think he's a little bit bigger. Joey is a little dummy and not as big. So I'd go with Nick in a fight. Nick's prettier, though, so he might not want to get hit. Watts versus the Bozas? I think... Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the Watts? I don't know. That's tough. Watts to me scream hardworking. I feel like Bozas are a little bit more Bozas are more, what's the word? Not prima donnas, but I feel like they're more I don't even know the word. But I think Watts would win. Talk about the podcast. I want to see 1917, but I haven't seen it yet. You know what? Actually, I wanted to ask you guys. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Should I review the Aaron Hernandez documentary? I'm going to watch it, so I was just wondering if you guys would like me to review it. It's on Netflix now. Ultra says, better fit. Colts, Chargers. Put Brady in that offense, you get good results. Jacoby Brissett looked pretty good. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I just don't think it's going to happen because of Deflategate. Yeah, next football season a long way away. You know what? I actually enjoy this channel more when it's the off season. I feel like I kind of allow myself to have more creativity. Okay, cool. Rebecca already watched it. There you go. Mitch versus Jake. Jake's 5'2", I think. Something like that. Jake, if you're out there. I feel like everybody does that, Rebecca. I don't know. He was at his training facility at TB12, right beside Gillette Stadium that same day. So I don't know. I think the news that McDaniels is coming back only means that it's a larger chance that he'll come back, personally. Crow, stop it. You have no chance at beating me in Madden, bro. Get out of here. It's because it's Tom Brady. That's why everybody blows it out of proportion. Do a video about the worst or best Super Bowls. Okay. I'll think about that during the bye week. I do need to play Dilly. He said he's going to come next time. Yeah, shout out to LSU for winning the national championship. Do I think Tom Brady will be back with the Patriots? Yes. Hey, thank you, Tony. Rebecca says, thank the Lord Soleil isn't going to the Browns. I think that might be, I didn't get to do a video on it, but I think that might be the worst hiring of any of the hirings was Stefanski. Oh, there you go, Rob. I think I gave you my answer. I think it will be a flop. All right, I'll take a couple more questions. Get your last questions in here. Ooh, I don't know about Will Grier. Singh says, Mitch, who has the last good quarterback? What? Who was the last good quarterback the Patriots faced in a Super Bowl? The last good quarterback. That's a good question. I mean, weren't they all good at that point in their season that year? Like, that's a tough question to answer. Like, Matt Ryan is definitely good. So, that's the for sure answer. But Goff was good last year, and Foles was good the year that they played him as well. So that's a really difficult question to ask. What are you talking about, Michael? Baker won't be traded, no. Rebecca says if he could get groomed by someone like Breeze, Brady, or Rodgers, I think he has potential. They're not going to just work with what they have. I think they might bring Cam back, but we'll have to see. What was my favorite Patriots Super Bowl win? Super Bowl 49 over the Seahawks. Who is the best pass rusher in the 2020 draft? You know what, bro? I cannot confirm my answer until I do my draft studying. I think there's a wide consensus on that answer if you even just do a Google search. But I'm not going to confirm my answer. Even with the quarterbacks, until I watch it by myself and then figure it out. I don't like to just take other people's opinions when I haven't watched everything and then just tell you, because that's not the way it works. Offensive coordinator for Seattle. But I mean, maybe both. Sorry, Michael. See you, Van. Malcolm Butler is in Tennessee. All right, guys. I think that's it for the live stream. If you enjoyed, George Kittle or Travis Kelce, spike the like button. We'll see you soon. We'll see. I'll post out these previews separately for tomorrow. And then I'm not sure what we're going to do on Friday. Maybe we'll do another Madden thing or something. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. But anyways, maybe another surprise video. Maybe the Aaron Hernandez review. We'll have to see. Thanks, guys, for joining me live. Peace out.